I just finished building a prototype vacuum tube stereo amplifier, and this is the first time it's been tested and played with speakers. These are do-it-yourself speakers that I built a few years ago, specifically for the reason that I can't blow them up. I can feed these things several hundred watts and they just laugh it off. So they're being used here in case something goes wrong, and because I'm going to turn them up really loud. So what we have here is a couple of driver circuit boards. Each one has a couple of 6 CG7 tubes on it to drive 4 GE6550As, pair of EdCore output transformers. There were dummy load resistors for testing with sine waves not being used at this point. The main power supply is this guy that can go up to 650 volts at about 1.5 amps, but it's set on 450 right now. And the old fluke is just used for filaments. And then there's a little circuit board down here that makes plus and minus 150 volts for the driver and bias circuitry. I have a current meter on the cathode of the output tubes, and one of the channels, about 50 milliamps of bias on each tube. And I have a scope across each speaker output, 2 channels. Both of them are sitting on top of each other with 0 now. I've got the audio analyzer set up to measure peak watts into 4 ohms, but with music it's just going to bounce around and show random numbers. This will show the total current drawn by the home amplifier, the whole amplifier. The idea here is to figure out how big of a power supply I have to build, because when I run the amplifier makes 75 watts just at the edge of clipping. It's a full triode amp, and it draws about 600 milliamps in the process. But to play real music, you shouldn't need all 600 milliamps, because you're not going to play a sine wave at 75 watts all the time. So I'm going to push the button on the iPad and unleash about 4 minutes of loud. During that 4 minutes of loud, I could see the scope show clipping 2 or 3 times, so we were hitting 75 watts on peaks. That's probably as loud as you'd want to play the amplifier in real world. And it looked like the current meter was at the loudest parts was hitting about 450 milliamps. So a 450 milliamp power supply would probably be plenty, maybe even 400. Okay, one more picture of the amp. I didn't show the current meter at full tilt.